Hello, and welcome to the Engineer Your Success, Leadership, and Life Harmony Like a Mother show. I'm Kenya Romanovska, award winning investigative journalist turned maternity leave and working motherhood strategist. And we are here to turn the motherhood penalty into your ultimate advantage because you want the career, home life, health, and financial satisfaction you deserve while engineering a better world for your children. You're probably here because you are a highly educated woman whose identity was defined by her career in STEM, a demanding or a corporate job up until you had kids, and you don't want to be an exhausted, burnt out motherhood penalty and $1 million wealth gap statistic while watching new fathers experience a fatherhood premium through increased wages and promotions. So you are here to turn the motherhood penalty into your advantage. And what does that mean? What does the motherhood penalty mean? Well, it starts by affecting your mindset through an increased mental load at home and decreased confidence in juggling a career and family. Have two full-time jobs, but not twice the time. And what moms often report coming into our circle is that they may have mental health and anxiety issues, often linked to disturbed sleep. There's a never ending to do list, right? And it feels like you're never done. You feel like you have to do it all on the home front. And maybe even though your partner is very well meaning, it's just not equitable in terms of planning, executing, and sharing the responsibilities at home equitably. You are probably a perfectionist, right? At your high demanding jobs, mistakes are highly demanding job. Your mistakes are often almost not tolerated, right? They can lead to big consequences. Maybe now you're doubting being a good professional or mother. You might have concerns about career breaks that might impact your advancement or earning potential. That confidence gap, right, is there. Maybe you've been treated differently at work after motherhood or even with pregnancy, right? And you overall may feel a decrease in your quality of life being a professional and a mother, and you need solutions. You don't want the status quo. You want to enjoy being a working mom and being a professional. And that's what we're here to do. And on today's episode, I'm talking about the importance of having a solid maternity leave. And this is about 10 days before my due date with my third child as an entrepreneur. My maternity transition will look different. I will have a maternity slowdown, but I will keep on showing up for my clients in some capacity. I've been doing this for 6 years while having my kids. And in my case, it's been really, really good for my mental health and overall my family. But you can probably hear the breathlessness. The baby is pushing up against my diaphragm. So let's talk about why a strong maternity leave plan is a very important part of how it can determine your career trajectory. you When you go on a caregiving break for little people or sometimes older people, you can feel out of sight and out of mind and wonder if you'll be treated the same way in your profession as you did before having kids. And the research that we found shows that your manager's attitude and style might have a bigger impact than your company's policies on your maternity leave transition. So how can you be more in command of this transition and this big change in your life? Well, it starts with a plan. Um, and that's what I'm going to cover today in this podcast. Let me organize my notes properly for you. I'm here. Perfect. So here's what a strong maternity leave plan will include. Number one, communication parameters and permissions. Many of you, I've heard stories from many moms who say, well, I had no idea that there was a restructuring going on or that there were job opportunities. But in many places, by default, if you don't give explicit permission to your manager to communicate with you, they can't by law or by policy. So it's extremely important to outline if you want to be in touch with your team and when. It makes it easier for your boss. For example, you could say that you want to be in touch over promotions, any restructuring, any leadership changes. Maybe you want to attend town halls and things like that, right? You can also mark where you don't want to be communicated with, and you can state that your preferences might change depending on how things will be with baby, right? So keep it clear, but also open-ended that you have the right to change your mind because this is a big transition in your life. Write down timelines in that plan. When do you plan to have your last day at work, and when do you plan to return to work? Then I would also include career intentions. Some of you have a very clear picture of where you want to advance in your career, others not so much, but do your best. Perhaps you can discuss projects that you're most interested in. Maybe you want to highlight that you're flexible and that when you come back, you're glad to come back to any projects where they may need your talents. You can talk about the skills that you bring to the table and how you want to be kept in mind. So state your career intentions as clearly as possible. I know that many of you are unsure about how you'll feel after having your first, second, or third child, but err on the side of thinking that you may want to have at least the same level of responsibility, right? If you're sure that you're going to want to work part-time, then I would suggest reaching out to me for a more personal discussion, because you have to be strategic with those decisions, right? Depending on your field. So I don't want to give a one-size-fits-all approach to that. So I would also include a summary of the value you have contributed to the team in the last 3 to 6 months. If there are any performance reviews during that time, any bonuses, things like that, it's good to have that information on the record. And I encourage you to put a summary of the skills you expect to bring back to the table after your leave. I recorded a podcast on that next week. Many of you, especially after first child, the confidence dips because you've been away from your profession, and you wonder if you're going to be perceived in the same way. But it's important to focus on the skills and value that you develop as a mom and not project any insecurity that might come. I mean, unless you have a very supportive manager and a place where you can be vulnerable, that's a decision up to you. But I strongly encourage you to focus on the value you bring to the table. Remember that men are often promoted for the potential and women for their past accomplishments. So get into the practice of speaking of your potential that could impact your earnings, right? And be considered for projects that help move you up the food chain. And then your plan should also include an on-wrap and get back in touch plan for the 2 weeks preceding your return and the two first weeks of your return. So depending on how long your leave is, I'm recording this from Canada where leaves are longer. I think it's good to have a plan for who you want to talk to, who you want to have coffee chats with, warm yourself up after a leave, especially if you haven't been communicating during your maternity leave. It's reassuring to know, like, okay, on this day, I'm going to talk to this colleague, right? And I'm going to reach out to this one, and I'm going to catch up on XYZ policies, all of that. Often I've noticed that when people return to work, depending on the environment, the ramp up on the work end can feel slower. Maybe you're not getting your laptop in time, things like that. So make sure that you're setting yourself up for a successful return by knowing what you want to do. When I was going on my first maternity leave and I worked in corporate communications, I designed a one-pager that summarized all of this. So I wrote down my career trajectory. I had access to a graphic design, but you can use something like Canva. And I mapped how long I've been at the company, like the big highlights, the milestones that I have achieved, any positive feedback I got from colleagues. And then I marked where I would be on maternity leave and my hopes. And I also wrote a letter to myself, reminding myself of the contribution that I had made to the team, so that coming back a year later, I would remind myself that I have so much value to offer, because many of us forget how much value we have to offer. So this is what I would encourage you to do, to include in a maternity leave plan. You're welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Messenger. If you want to strategize about this, I'll probably be nurse trapped in December with a new baby, but I'll be very glad to do voice memos with anybody who wants to discuss this plan with me. Now, what are the benefits of a maternity leave plan? It showcases your leadership skills, and it's a way to manage upwards. A lot of managers are still not trained or well equipped to handle maternity leave transitions. They may not show the initiative. They may not have taken any training. So by preparing this plan, you're giving your boss a tool. You're showing confidence. You're showing leadership skills. You're being proactive. It's just really good for your personal brand, and it shows that you care about your career. So all of that can have a positive impact on your personal brand. Your personal brand, remember, is what people say about you behind closed doors when you're not there, right? It's the value that you bring to the table and how they perceive it. It's your style, your attitude, whether you are dramatic or accountable. All of that is part of your personal brand. A plan like that demonstrates a commitment to your profession, and that contradicts the often hidden bias and conscious bias that mothers are less committed to their career. So by having a plan like that and showing you are committed, you are tackling this unconscious bias, right? Which is in your advantage. As I said earlier, it gives your boss the tools and information to communicate with you and keep you in mind for opportunities. And obviously, it supports business continuity, right? So I didn't particularly state the whole operations piece. I don't. I'm covering more the communication and career part, but obviously, if you're handing off work for any break, any vacation, you would have a plan on, the deliverables you have and who would be involved in all of that. So again, to recap, one of the most important pieces in your plan include your expected leave start and end dates, permission to communicate with you by phone or email if that's applicable, and for which purposes, right? Job opportunities, important town halls, restructuring, leadership changes. Maybe you have a desire to remain connected to the email system. Some companies have policies where you should be disconnected. They may not give you the option to do that, but at least it moves the ball forward for others, or maybe an exception will be made for you. And and if you want to work part-time, especially in larger companies, it might require advance notice and a flexible manager. I've seen people successfully request working part-time on maternity leave, but other companies are concerned about the policies. You may be concerned about impact on any benefits you may receive. So if you do want to work part-time, that might take some really proactive planning and looking at the pros and cons and the obstacles, right? This is unfortunate that we're not more evolved this way, because I've noticed that many women do like to keep some form of engagement with their work. They find it's good for their mental health, their career, their connections, everything. But this is not something that's extremely common in companies, at least what I've seen anecdotally. So just keep in mind that if that's your intent, you have to be very, very strategic and proactive about it, from my experience. So I hope that this short session on preparing a maternity leave plan has been insightful. We will send an email recap of this. You, as I mentioned, you're welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn or on Messenger to chat about this plan. If you have any specific questions, if you feel like you might need a little bit more of a personalized approach, and if you've enjoyed this podcast or live show, then please share with your network. I think that no mom should be left alone to tackle the so-called motherhood penalty. I think motherhood is a wonderful opportunity to redefine who you are, build your own vision of success and leadership, whether it's at work, whether it's at home. And I don't think that we just have to live by the rules of the workplaces and the current society. I think that we, especially if you're listening this far in this podcast, you're called to design the future, engineer a better world for your kids, right? And that means bringing more of us moms into the design of the world policies, maternity leave plans. So let's turn this motherhood penalty into your advantage. And I also ask for your good wishes as I prepare to welcome this third child. It's gone by so fast. I can't believe that we will meet this baby in a couple of days. And I thank you for tuning in and for your encouragement of Pros and Babes. See you all next time. Maybe I will show up next week if I don't have a baby. Otherwise, we'll try to post an update and let you know how things are going. And, I'll take my maternity slow down and reconnect when we are ready. Take care, everyone. Thanks again. I'm Kenya Romanovska.